Good day, everyone. Today, I will be presenting a case study titled Impact of Bilingualism on Language Development in 46 Egyptian Children, published in 2024. This study explores an important question in education and language development, which is whether learning two languages at an early age affects children's ability to develop language skills. Before I begin with the details of the study, I would like to briefly explain why this topic is important in today's context. In many countries, including Malaysia, children are often used to be exposed to more than one language from a very young age. For example, they may speak their mother tongue at home, learn English in school, and sometimes even be exposed to a third language. And because of this, bilingualism is not just an academic topic, but something that affects real life learning and communication. However, despite its importance, there are still many misunderstandings about how bilingualism affects children, especially during early development. Some parents may worry that introducing English too early could interfere with their child's first language, and others may think that children should fully master one language before learning another. This is why research like this is very valuable, as it provides evidence based answers rather than just assumptions. And in this presentation, I will walk you through the key aspects of the study, including its purpose, methods, findings, and also the significance. And by the end of this presentation, we will have a clearer understanding of whether bilingualism is truly a problem or actually a benefit for young children. First, let's understand the context of this study in more depth. Bilingualism refers to the ability to use two languages in everyday life. In today's world, bilingualism is no longer rare. In fact, many children grow up in environments where they are exposed to multiple languages from a very young age. For example, a child may speak one language at home with their family and another language at school or in the community. This is especially common in countries where English is taught as a second language. However, despite how common bilingualism is, there are still many misconceptions about it. One major concern is that learning two languages at the same time might confuse children. Some people think that children will mix the two languages and struggle to separate them. Another concern is that bilingual children may experience delays in speaking or may have smaller vocabularies compared to monolingual children. For instance, a bilingual child might know fewer words in each individual language, which could make it seem like they are behind. But in reality, if you combine the vocabulary from both languages, their total vocabulary is often similar or even larger. Another important concept is code switching, which is when bilingual speakers switch between languages within a conversation or even within a sentence. And some people see this as a problem, but linguists actually consider it as a natural and normal part of bilingual communication. It shows that the child is able to use both languages flexibly depending on the context. And because of these misunderstandings, bilingual children are sometimes wrongly identified as having language delays or learning difficulties. And this can affect how teachers treat them in the classroom or may even impact their confidence. Therefore, It is very important to study bilingualism scientifically so that we can understand what is normal and what is not. And this study helps to provide evidence about how bilingualism actually affects young children, especially during the critical early age of language development. The main purpose of this study is to investigate the impact of bilingualism on language development in young children. Specifically, the researchers wanted to find out whether learning English at an early age would affect the development of the children's first language, which is Arabic. In other words, does learning a second language harm or support overall language development? To add on, the researchers were also interested in whether early bilingual exposure could influence how children manage and switch between two languages. For example, can children easily switch from Arabic at home to English in school without confusion? This ability is important because it reflects how well they can function in different social and academic environments. Another aspect of the purpose is to examine whether early bilingualism supports or interferes with academic readiness. Since language is closely connected to learning, especially in subjects like reading and writing, understanding its development is very important. The study also aims to provide reassurance to parents who may hesitate to introduce a second language early due to the fear of negative effects. By providing real data and evidence, the researchers hope to guide better decisions in both home and school environments. So, overall, the purpose goes beyond just language. It also connects to education, communication, and child development as a whole. Now, let's look at the participants. The study involved 46 children between the ages of 5 and 6 years old, and all of them were students in the same American International School in Egypt. And this is important because it ensures that all children share a similar learning environment and also socio-economic background. And additionally, all children were considered average students with no history of language delay or speech therapy. And this helps ensures that the results are not affected by any other developmental issues. In addition, the children's language exposure pattern is very important to highlight. Even though they were learning English in school, their main emotional and social interactions at home were in Arabic. This is significant because the first language is often tied to identity, culture, and family relationships, and maintaining the first language at home helps the children feel more comfortable and confident when communicating with their family members. It also supports deeper language development as children can express more complex thoughts and emotions in their first language. Another important point is that all parents had a good level of education and were able to support their children's learning. This means that the children were likely exposed to a richer language input such as reading, conversations, and educational activities. This type of environment plays a strong role in supporting both first and second language development. Therefore, the participants were not only similar in age and school environment, but also in the quality of support they received at home. This makes the study even more controlled and helps ensure that the results are mainly influenced by bilingualism rather than other external factors. In terms of methods, the researchers carefully designed the study to focus only on the effect of bilingualism. All children started learning English at the age of 3, and they used Arabic as their main language at home. And they also had parents who mainly communicated with them in Arabic. And to assess language development, two tools were used. The first is the preschool language skills, also known as PLS 5, which measures English language skills. The second is the receptive expressive Arabic language skill, or REAL skill, which measures Arabic language development, and these tests were conducted in a controlled and comfortable environment to ensure accurate results. Furthermore, the use of standardized assessment tools ensures that the results are consistent and comparable. These tools were designed based on developmental milestones, meaning that they can accurately determine whether a child's language ability is appropriate for their age. And another important aspect of the method is that both receptive and expressive language skills were assessed. This is crucial because a child might understand a language well but not be able to express it fluently, or vice versa. By measuring both aspects, the researchers gained a more complete understanding of the child's language ability, and in addition, conducting the assessments in separate sessions helps reduce fatigue and also can maintain the child's attention. Young children can easily become tired or distracted, so this approach ensures better performance and more reliable results. And the presence of a familiar assessors who play an important role. When children feel comfortable, they are more likely to respond naturally and confidently. And all these careful procedures showed that the researchers took important steps to ensure the accuracy and also fairness of the study. As a result, we can have greater confidence in the findings that will be presented in the next section. Now, let's look more closely at the results of this study. The findings showed that all 46 children demonstrated normal language development in both English and Arabic. This is very important because it directly challenges the idea that learning two languages at an early age might confuse children and slow down their progress. When the researchers assessed English using the PLS 5, they looked at both receptive skills, which means understanding language, and expressive skills, which means producing the language. The results showed that the children's expressive communication and overall language scores were consistent with their actual age, and this indicates that the children were able to use English effectively in communication. However, there was a slight difference in auditory comprehension, where the children's language age was about 1 month lower than their chronological age. But this difference is extremely small and not considered clinically significant. In real life situations, a 1 month difference does not affect the children's ability to communicate or learn. For Arabic, which is their first language, the results from the real skill showed that all children achieved satisfactory scores. This means that their Arabic language development was strong and not negatively affected by learning English. Overall, The results clearly show that these children were able to manage both languages successfully. They could use English in school and Arabic at home without any major difficulty. This also suggests that the human brain, especially in early childhood, is capable of handling multiple languages at the same time. Based on these findings, the researchers concluded that early bilingualism does not harm language development. In fact, the study shows that children can develop both their first language and second language effectively when they are exposed to both in a structured and consistent way. One very important point highlighted in the conclusion is the role of the home environment. The children in this study continued to use Arabic as their main language at home with their parents and siblings. This consistent use of the first language helps maintain a strong linguistic foundation. It allows children to fully develop their native language while also learning a second language in school. So, the key message here is not just the bilingualism is safe, but that it works best when there is a balance. The first language should not be replaced, but supported alongside the second language. This has important implications for both parents and educators, especially in multilingual societies. This study is highly significant because it helps to correct a long-standing misconception about bilingualism. For many years, people believed that exposing children to two languages at a young age could cause confusion, delay, or even language disorders. However, this study provides clear evidence that this belief is not accurate. First, the study shows that bilingual children are capable of achieving normal language development in both languages. This is important for teachers because sometimes bilingual children are wrongly assumed to have learning difficulties. Second, the study highlights the importance of early language exposure. Learning a second language at a young age does not harm development, but instead, it allows children to have more time to practice and become more proficient. Third, the findings are important for parents. Many parents worry that introducing English too early might weaken the child's first language. However, this study shows that as long as the first language is used consistently at home, it will continue to develop well. And finally, this study contributes to the field of education by supporting bilingual education programs. It suggests that schools can confidently introduce second languages early without fear of negative consequences. Beyond just language development, bilingualism also offers several cognitive and social benefits. Research has shown that bilingual children often have better executive functioning skills. This includes abilities such as attention control, problem solving, and multitasking. For example, bilingual children are used to switching between two languages. This strengthens their abilities to focus and manage different tasks efficiently. In addition, bilingual individuals tend to have greater metalinguistic awareness. This means they have a better understanding of how language works, including grammar and vocabulary. Bilingualism also enhances communication skills. Children who speak more than one language can interact with a wider range of people and cultures. From a long-term perspective, being bilingual can provide more academic and career opportunities. In today's globalized world, knowing multiple languages is a valuable skill. Therefore, bilingualism should not only be seen as harmless, but as an advantage that supports overall development. Now, let's examine the strengths of this study. One major strength is the control environment. All participants were selected from the same international school, which means they shared similar educational experiences. This helps reduce external variables such as differences in teaching quality, curriculum, or exposure to language. Another strength is the similar socio-economic background of the children. Since all families met the school's admission requirements, this reduces the influence of factors like parental education or income. The study also used standardized and reliable assessment tools such as PLS 5 and Real Skill. These tools are widely recognized and provide accurate measurements of language ability. Additionally, the researchers ensured that the children were comfortable during testing by creating a friendly and supportive environment. This helps improve the validity of the results. Overall, these strengths make the study more reliable and trustworthy. Despite its strengths, the study also has some limitations. First, the sample size is relatively small, with only 46 participants. A larger sample size would provide more generalizable results. Second, all participants were from a single school in Egypt. This means the findings may not represent children from different regions, cultures, or educational systems. Third, the study is cross-sectional, meaning it only examines the children at one point in time. It does not show how their language development may change in the future. A longitudinal study, which follows children over several years, would provide more insight into long-term effects of bilingualism. Another limitation is that the children came from relatively high socioeconomic backgrounds. This may influence their access to educational resources, which can support language development. Therefore, while the results are positive, they should be interpreted with some caution. In my opinion, this study provides valuable insights into bilingualism and language development. It helps reduce fear and misunderstanding, especially among parents who worry that exposing their children to multiple languages may cause harm. Personally, I believe that bilingualism should be encouraged, especially in multicultural and global societies. However, I also think it is important to maintain balance. Parents should continue to use the first language at home as it plays a crucial role in identity, culture, and emotional connection. From an educational perspective, teachers should be more aware of the needs of bilingual learners and avoid misdiagnosing them as having language difficulties. This study also reminds us that differences in language development do not always mean there is a problem. Sometimes it is simply a natural variation in bilingual learning. To conclude, this study clearly demonstrates that bilingualism does not negatively affect language development in young children. The children in this study were able to develop both Arabic and English successfully, showing that the human brain is highly adaptable, especially in early childhood. The most important takeaway is that early exposure to a second language is beneficial, not harmful. However, maintaining the first language at home is essential for balanced development. Overall, bilingualism should be seen as a strength that enhances communication, cognitive skills, and future opportunities. And that's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention.